Alright, welcome to my video. My name is Eckogen. So we're going to go over the first boss in Skybreak Spire, aka Black Tower. So we're going to go over the mechanics for Venomsky Drake. His attack rotation is that he does 2 headbutts, then he'll do either a head slam or a tongue attack, which is unblockable, so the tank needs to keep that in mind. And then he does 3 tail swipes. So these 3 tail swipes will damage the party quite severely, so make sure you CC them. Because he has 8 CC bars, we always do knockdowns for this, just because we want to save our stuns for the ads. So when you actually begin the fight, we're going to fight at the left back leg. That's the ideal position to fight him at. Alright, so there are ad mechanics for this. So ads spawn at 90, 60, and 30%. So at each health threshold, he roars, becomes invincible, and he jumps to the middle of the room where he is right now. And then he spawns ads. So at 90%, there should be 4 ads. One at 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock, and 9 o'clock. At 60%, there are 5 ads. So at 2 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 8 o'clock, and 10 o'clock. And at 30%, there's going to be 6 ads. At 12, 2, 4, 6, 8, and 10. So the party should already be predetermined on who's going to take care of the ads. Ads have 4 CC bars, so they must be stunned. And all of them must be CC'd, otherwise it'll be a wipe. So there are 2 eggs that automatically spawn when we begin the boss fight. So a small egg will spawn at 7 o'clock, and then the large egg will spawn at 1 o'clock. The small egg is only for the tank. Oh, and it's 90%, so here's the ads for the first phase. So we just gotta stay at the left hind leg. So anyway, as I was saying, the small egg is only for the tank, and the large egg is for the buff transporter. So what the buff transporter does is when he hits the egg, he gets a 5-second buff and an indicator. When the buff expires, the red AoE will drop where he's standing. So pretty much everyone who was inside the indicator where he is when he drops it will receive either a red buff or a blue buff. Either of those will cleanse the poison that you get, because when you're doing this fight, you're continuously getting poison stacks. That's why we all stand here to get cleansed. So watch, here's the buff transporter. He's going to drop the buff. AoE is always red, so since I got a blue buff, I want to stand outside of the AoE, because standing inside of it will cause a debuff because the colors don't match. If I got a red, I can stay inside the red AoE, and then I would get an AP buff. So the flowers spawn at 80, 50, and 20%, and these heal them. The only way to get rid of these flowers is to have the red buff active and then step inside of it. So kind of like Shogun's Lament. Okay, so I got a red buff, so I'm going to stay inside here since I get a AP buff towards it. And the flowers are already gone, so unfortunately. And remember that to get rid of the flowers, you have to step into it with the red buff. And that it's only good for one-time use, so pretty much everyone needs to help out when they have the buff. And that was his tail swipe right there, that's why we did the knockdown to CC him. Here comes the buff again. So I got red. So remember that that's the red buff right there, I'll show you. So remember that the red buff lasts for 15 seconds. So for 15 seconds you're immune to poison. Alright, so 60%, there's the ads. Anyway, so with the red buff, you have 15 seconds of poison immunity. And then after that 15 seconds expire, it automatically becomes a blue buff. And that gives you another 15 seconds of immunity. So essentially you get 30 seconds if you start with the red buff. If it's RNG, well, because it is RNG, if you get the blue buff, you only get 15 seconds, and then the poison stacks begin. So with the blue buff, you only get 15 seconds immunity, whereas the red buff, you get 30 seconds because it starts with red and then becomes blue. So because I got red, I matched with the AoE, so I get to stay in it. If I had blue, I would step outside. So actually he is 50%, so he's going to start the second flower phase. There it is. So this is where the buff transporter comes in to drop the buff, so that way we can actually get rid of the eggs, or not the eggs, the flowers. So I got a blue, so I had to step outside the AoE. So unfortunately I cannot help convert the flowers. Once the flowers are converted, they become red, and they damage the boss for the duration, instead of healing him. 20%, the only different thing is that he constantly spawns flowers. So the buff transporter needs to bring the buff over more often and frequent because flowers are constantly spawning. So you have to get rid of them, otherwise he's going to heal up massively. And since I got the blue buff, I have to stand outside because my buff does not match. Remember that while you're on here, like on his left leg, if the buff transporter comes to drop it and you don't have any poison stacks, because let's say you have the antidote here. Oh, it's 30%, so we'll kill the ads real quick. So remember that 30% there are 6 ads to deal with. And then quickly get behind the left leg. So yeah, as I was saying, if you take the antidote, the Khanda Vihar antidote, it will cleanse your poison stack, but be mindful of the timing of it, because if you do that and let's say the buff transporter comes because you have no poison stack, once he drops that, you're going to be dead. So if you're going to take the antidote, then be sure to stand away from the AoE so you don't accidentally get it, or time it correctly so that once the antidote expires, you'll start building poison stacks, and then when he drops the buff, you'll be okay. So he's past the 20% threshold, so this is where he's constantly going to be spawning flowers. And this is where people with the red buff will then step into these flowers to convert them. Since I have a blue buff, I can't do that. So at the 20% phase, the buff transporter is going to hit the egg more often and get us more buffs, because we're going to need it to get rid of these flowers that are constantly spawning. So I got a blue again, so unfortunately I can't help, but see that when someone steps into a flower, it converts it to a red flower, which damages the boss. So as you can see right there, the flowers became red. Now they're going to hurt the boss. That's his tail swipe, so you use knockdowns. There are no more ads spawning, so this is pretty much just DPS. So I got a red buff finally. Let's see if I can find any flowers here. There's no flowers. Probably won't get this one in time. Oh, I missed it. Just ran out of time. So yeah, if you step into it like that, you'll get rooted without the buff. And there we go. That is the first boss for Black Tower. So don't forget that the ads spawn at 90, 60, and 30%. And at 90% there are 4 ads. At 60% there are 5 ads. And 30% there are 6 ads. Remember that the buff transporter essentially has to keep getting the egg to ensure that we always get the buff to cleanse the poison, and also clear the flowers when they spawn. So flowers spawn at 80, 50, and 20%. So anyway, that is pretty much the video for Venomsky Drake. I will post all the mechanics and summary of the guide in the video description below. So if you have any questions, please confer with that, or just ask me in the comments and I will try to help you out to the best that I can. So thank you for watching. Hope that helped.